Hey guys, how you doing? It's Mick Tully on the World of Martial Arts television show. Great guest today. The guy actually needs no introduction whatsoever, but it's a pretty good introduction. He is literally the Don Draeger of our generation. And if you don't know who Don Draeger is, shame on you. We're going to go straight to a guy that I have to admit, I'm really impressed with. The more I find out about him, the more I like. It's Mr. Mahi Palunia. So Mahi, you like to be referred to as, yeah?
That works great.
No, beautiful, beautiful. So what we're going to do is, instead of doing the usual preamble and finding out about who you are, we can get into that later. What I want to just get you straight away on is, you've got an upcoming symposium, and if you could explain, because it's a little bit different than a lot of the run-of-your-mill seminars. So it's a symposium, and first of all, what is it about? And secondly, why have you gone for this format?
Okay, so first of all, thank you for having me here. It's a pleasure, and I really do enjoy sharing my passion of these arts with all those who are interested. Yeah. So first of all, what's the symposium about? Let's just take a step back. We most of us martial artists, we do love blades, yeah, and we love blades, and most of us have practiced one or two or three sorts of blades through our careers. But here's the thing: think about this for a minute. What blade conquered the world? It was not the Asian bladecraft; it was the Western bladecraft, right? And so you had Spain, and sometimes with as few as 300 people conquering entire countries. You have this rich history of bladecraft that people refer to almost in a mystical fashion, but I've never really just touched hands or played with it to say, hey, what can I extract from here, right? So he said, hey, let's look at this, because I love Asian martial arts just as everybody else. That's how I grew up learning things. But over a period of time, I said, why do we not also pay attention to this entire Western bladecraft? So now, one thing we have to understand is, this whole idea about styles and nationalism and purity, and quote me on this, is bullshit, right? It's pure bullshit, right? Because no art develops in a vacuum, right? When arts are tested, we like to use the terms pressure tested these days to say sparring, but these arts were head tested, meaning whose head was severed from the rest of the body, right? So we have to look at that and say, okay, who did these arts clash with? How did they shape these arts, or how are they shaped by them? So if you don't study history, you're bound to repeat its mistakes. And if you do study history, not only can you learn from it, but you actually have a chance to become halfway intelligent, and what I call the possibility of becoming a martial comprehensivist. Now, what's a martial comprehensivist? A martial comprehensivist is somebody who can have a complete picture of how they play in this world, how they engage in this world. So what are the things that come into play here? Number one, your genetics. I know it's a taboo subject. Oh my God, he's talking genetics. Come on, grow up. You're fighting, right? Genetics. Second, geography. Because the way you would say move in a marshland is going to be very different than you would move in the sub-Saharan deserts of Africa, right?
Very true.
That's going to shape things, right? And then the third thing is your attitudes. Good example of attitudes is I was working with some people from a particular tribe where they would go to war without any supplies. And I asked them, what do you mean you go to war without supplies? He's like, oh, I'm going to eat my enemy. Now, that's a very different mindset than, say, people from my part of the world in India, where, many of us were vegetarians. So you carried your whole supplies. And what that did is it gave you a different set of a supply chain and logistics than the guy who says, I'm going to eat you, Mick. I'm coming empty-handed with my blade. I'm going to chop you up and you're my dinner. So these things shape how we fight and who we become, right? So Spain was the first truly global empire. starting in the 1500s. Now, they have a history of conquest. They have a history of exploration. They have a history of being conquered and then removing the conquerors, right? So this is what we're looking to explore. So what that means is that, hey, let's look at destreza, right? The high art of the Spaniards. Let's look at how it influenced the arts of Northern Africa, the curved nimcha, right? Moving down, say, to the Philippines, we are bringing two examples. One is Cebu, that was conquered. What that did, how it inspired the use of two blades and not, right? So a lot of people like to say, hey, FMA, it comes from Spanish destreza. Maybe not, right? Because here's the thing, when you're looking at destreza, this is a high art. This was the art of the nobles. And the ones who were conquered were peasants, right? Are they going to have access to the same kind of weapons? Not necessarily. So are they point oriented or are they edge oriented? So those kind of things have to be examined to actually understand whether we are living in fallacies or truly exploring the arts.
It's interesting, just as you were saying that, I just like your take on this, because again, when we talk about martial arts, we always talk about the Eastern martial arts, you know, Japan, China, the Philippines. And then if you've got even half an idea about history, you know, Europe were pretty good. You know, there's a lot of people in the world who speak Spanish. There's a lot of people who speak English. And yeah, especially in England, no one realizes about the martial arts. But in basically researching what you're doing with the Symposium, it made me realize, even though I'm a Filipino martial artist, really, you know, I teach Jeet Kune Do, I do jiu-jitsu, but Filipino martial arts and Kali I really like. And it was, I had an understanding, but I didn't realize just how much of the Spanish influence, especially on the bladed arts, there was. So, like, can you explain a little bit, you know, for the guys who are watching, how did that come about? Just say in Philippines, just give that as a case study all of its own.
Wow, that's going to piss off so many people, but let's do it.
Yeah, if you want to know the reason, that's why I asked it. So I knew you were going to give me a good opinion.
So this is still ongoing work, right? This is still ongoing work. So here's my take. To say that all of it came from Spain is pure bullshit, because then what you're denying is that the indigenous fighting arts ever existed.
Yeah.
Right. However, at the same time, when you look at the techniques and the names of the techniques, you find them all in Spanish.
Exactly.
Numbering system, you find it all in Spanish, right? So what is that? Well, when you are conquered, language is one of the first things they force on you. Education is one of the first things they force on you. So if that becomes your nomenclature, you know, as Martin Heidegger has eloquently said, you know, language is the house of being. So if the new language has become Spanish, right?
Yeah.
That becomes the house within which the being of the Filipino martial arts, at least the ones that were pulled in, like old Ran Cebu, existed.
Yeah.
Right. So it did shape it. It did shape it, because the house and the environment you find yourself in, that's going to shape your movements. So but just saying that it's all Spanish does a disservice to the Filipino people, to their fierce fighting hearts, right? And their ingenuity, right? I mean, if you look at modern JKD, you really wouldn't have modern JKD without FMA, right? Because that idea of adaptability, that idea of taking whatever works, and above all, freaking crazy fighting heart, you know?
But
right?
you know, you've just said something like, which is going to be quite controversial myself. It's like Jeet Kune Do, great, but if we talk about Bruce Lee, that was a 32-year-old man's idea of combat against another human being. Yeah, because even though it wasn't a sport, but it was always 9 times out of 10 it was mano a mano. Yeah, and then the Filipino arts, complete opposite. And I won't mention his name, but he's a very, very good martial artist. And as he said, he goes, right, okay, Jeet Kune Do is good. He goes, but that's the combined knowledge of a 32-year-old man who did research fighting arts. He goes, but if you look at Kali, that is literally countless thousands of hours of guys killing each other, eating them, as you said. I wouldn't be able to say that, but yeah, eating them, right? And then come back and goes, just, it has to be, it's a crazy one. So can you, if we can talk just literally about how you have come about to just looking at the Spanish influence, because it's a real niche. I'm really interested in it because it's a really niche area.
I will differ with you on this.
Okay.
I think what is a niche is people's perspective, right? It is how narrow-minded you are as a martial artist. I'm just talking about people who think it's a niche. Here's the reason. So Philippines, you have Cebu on one end, then you have Mindanao that was never conquered. So their arts never made it against the Spaniards. But now you come into the new world.
Yeah.
Got the all of Americas, right? You have arts in Argentina, like Esgrima Criolla, fighting with a cloak and a dagger, Spanish. You go into the forests of Colombia and Panama. You have the resistance fighters who develop their own methods of fighting with the machete. Who are they fighting? The Spanish. You come to the American Southwest, right? You have the Dons, you have the guys who conquered the Great Plains. The first new Spanish army was in Mexico, right? They had the sable, their sword, which came into being, which became the weapon that was used by the new armies, and they conquered all the way up into California. Bullwhips were developed. What is that influence? Spanish. You come down to the southeast, into the bayous of Louisiana and Arkansas, a very particular American blade craft developed called the Bowie knife. And a major influence is Spanish. So I think a lot of us, especially, and you know what, I was guilty of this myself until 7-8 years ago, I think, where I was always like, hey, there's a superiority of the Asian fighting arts. But that's a perspective that was shaped by TV shows in the 60s and 70s, right?
Yeah.
But here is actual steel that conquered the world. So it's not niche. I would go and say this, that if you hold a blade, you most likely were influenced by Spanish. And the sad part is, if you don't study the roots, you truly won't be able to enjoy the fruit. So,
oh yeah, that is, first of all, beautiful. But you know, as you're saying this, like the ideas coming to my mind are, you know, I've said for years, I got into martial arts and I could have just gone boxing, but you know, a Mawashigeri Gidan sounds way more impressive.
Oh yeah,
than a round kick to the knee, you know. And yeah, it's that whole thing where, especially as young men, we're from this generation now where we were shaped by 2 or 3 movies, so we don't have the saturation point now. So you know, it was Bruce Lee's movies and then maybe Bruce Lee, whatever. But just as you were saying this, I'm thinking, man, yeah, the Spanish fighting arts need a better PR guy, because somebody's taking a hell of a lot of credit when you put it that way.
Now look at it this way, right? What changed Bruce Lee? What does Jeet Kune Do come down to? Okay, my limited understanding. Fencing and boxing. Where did fencing come from? The West. And that fencing footwork completely transformed Wing Chun.
Yeah.
Right? So even the most popular martial artist on the planet was deeply influenced by fencing. So this is what I mean. I'm like, what we need to understand is that, hey, let's shift. We went all the way one direction, but it's not about just swinging back and forth. But to be a comprehensivist, let's look at the impact of everything. Because when you do that, that's when you become, in my opinion, a superior martial artist, a superior fighter, and not just a fighter. Because, hey, look, I loved fighting full contact while I was in my teens and 20s. Can I do it now? Yeah, I can. But I pay the price for it much longer in terms of recovery.
Yeah.
Right? Now, what does that serve? Doesn't serve me well. What will serve me well is that I pull my weapons out, and then instead of spending time recovery, I spend that time hugging and kissing my little girls and playing with them.
Exactly.
Right? Because look, many of us are guilty of this, me included. When I was younger, wanted to be the biggest, toughest, baddest guy. Right? But let's be serious, when was the last time you saw an Indian guy with glasses be the biggest, toughest, baddest guy? It doesn't really happen, So, but here's the thing. What is the purpose of martial arts? It has to be two things. It's not just being the biggest, baddest guy. It's not just increasing the quantity of my life, but it's also improving the quality of my life, right? Yeah. So if the martial arts is doing more to damage my body in preparation for a fight that I may or may not have in my life, that's pure bullshit.
Yeah. Exactly. Right? Is what, Mahi, it's the classic trope of the warrior scholar. And it's funny because when you're younger, I used to see some of these guys who were doing the warrior scholar, masterless Ronin shite, and I listened to them. I go, you guys are complete dicks. And then I was like, just get into the rock, yeah. And then obviously as I got older, and I was always interested in philosophy. I was always interested in becoming a better human being. And then it's like you were saying, when you were talking about, when you're younger, you get the blade, say blade work's what you're interested in. So you're training, you're getting your attributes, you're getting crazy. And then as you get older, just the fact that you own the blade is pretty cool. Look after it, hone it. It's that whole thing of, especially the Japanese thing of the more you sharpen the blade, the more you understand the blade. And I truly believe most of the martial arts is all BS. I think it's just like, I don't want to quote Bruce Lee, but that vehicle for personal development, where it's like, right, so why do I feel better if I just feel more? I say this all the time to young guys. Why don't you want to be smart? The world's full of morons. Why do you want to be one of them? Read a book. Yeah, but I'm not interested in anything. You're interested in jiu-jitsu? Read a book on jiu-jitsu, and then guess what? You might get interested in something else. But yeah, it is fascinating. It's like you touched on a few points there, which I'd like you to just one especially. So when you talk about the fencing and its influence, people now think of fencing more of a, dare I say it, a French thing, right? But where do you see the original fencing come from?
Oh boy, fencing has been around since the time we were chimpanzees, right? That we've sharpened things and we've poked people with it, right? So That's first. Second, that's what I think about national borders, right? It's crazy. Those borders are so fluid. The empires changed, the borders changed. So trying to say that, hey, this is French, this is Italian, it's good. I mean, it gives you a little bit of national pride, but think about it a little more broadly. They all influenced each other, right? The Spaniards fought the Italians fought the French fought the Portuguese. So they each, steel sharpens steel. Now, what makes a difference is your genetics and your geography and how you adapt based on the pressures put on you. So yes, the first step is looking at Spanish, but in the future, we're also going to look at, okay, what did the rest of the Iberian Peninsula do? For example, the Portuguese, what did the Italians do? What did the French do? How did they all interact? Like one of the sessions of the symposium, we have a maestro both in the Spanish and the Italian traditions, who's going to discuss and show, how did he put it? He said, I feel the war of these two systems in my body because they move so differently. So he's going to compare and contrast how they interacted and what that means. Now, see, that's where the gold is. Because look, you and I are built differently. We eat differently, right? We stay in different places. The same movements will not work for us, My left knee is bad. Maybe your left knee is great and your right shoulder is bad, whatever, right? So we're not going to move the same way. So certain aspects, certain parts of these arts will speak to us. But there's something more deeper than that, right? Way, way deeper. See, at certain point, I would hope that we stop doing martial arts just to learn to defend ourselves. Because if I've been doing this shit for 30 years and I still am practicing just to defend myself, that you need to change your teacher.
Yeah.
Right. So why are we pursuing this? Because it is to pursue a deeper understanding of ourselves. That's how I look at it. Now, when we are trying to really understand ourselves, what do we need to understand? Who we are, where we come from, and who we are becoming. Now, those questions are best answered at the edge of the blade. Why? Because, Richard Burton had said, the history of humanity is the history of the sword. He's right, because it's the history of conflict that tells us who we are. So as we look at this spectrum and as we look at this comprehensive view of the world, not only do we understand the world out there, but we become better at understanding the world in here.
Yeah, it's as you were just saying that, it was, one, obviously I live in England, and one of the classic hey, I'm Irish, so I'm all right. I'm just visiting this place, but the situation that I've seen, especially in the UK, is we've got the classic Excalibur story. And most people think it's a myth, but if you don't mind, I'd like your thoughts on it, for the simple reason, and this is where it shows that I have done my research on you. When you talk about martial arts and the bearing of a king, and then especially when you were working in, you went and visited the Caribbean, and you met these guys, and you were like, but they had like a regal bearing. So first of all, I'd like your thoughts on Excalibur and the Arthurian legends, right? Which I truly believe that they did exist, but I think they've just been expanded on a little bit in some ways to make it sound a lot better. But then obviously, if you talk about the bearing of the king as well.
Look, myths are stories that point us to ourselves, right? Myth, the way I look at myth is these are stories that have been in some ways forgotten or embellished, but they're pointing to a greater truth. That's how I have always looked at it, right?
Yeah.
Do I think that the Arthurian legends are real? Well, they are real because they shaped history. Because look at the entire idea of uniting under a forgotten king or a lost king, number one.
Yeah.
Number two, that only the rightful master of a blade can draw a blade. And this is something you'll find all over Asia, that certain blades only respond to certain people. And I've seen this firsthand. I've seen blades move, okay? I probably get called a liar for this, but I know what is true in my life. So the blades move with certain people, right? 3, look at the entire idea of a knight and what it means to be chivalrous, right? So these myths, these stories completely informed what it meant to be this regal person, number one. Number two, what they also inspired is that, hey, I'm supposed to fight in this way. Number 3, I would say that is the Western Bushido.
100%.
Yeah,
exactly.
So, and the end of it, between the British, the Spaniards, and the Portuguese, they conquered the world for 500 years.
Yeah.
So that warrior code works. And I get into trouble for saying this. They're like, oh, you're talking about a colonial mindset and imperialism being good. I'm like, look at me, I'm Indian. And look at me, I'm also an American. We kicked the British out in both places from 2 different strategies. But the fact is, they were pain in our butts for a few centuries, right? And they shaped us, right? So I don't think we can judge yesterday from today's values.
Well, if you don't mind me saying, as you were saying, when you mentioned that it's the Western Bushido, when we talk about especially anything to do with chivalry, anything to do with being a knight, one of it's really lame, but it's one of my favorite movies of all time is Kingdom of Heaven, because there's so many great, it's Orlando Bloom's in it and he plays a knight, but it's really good because there's a great line in it where, just as he's about to make what the whole story is, Jerusalem's under siege. So Christians have had it for 1,000 years. Salah ad-Din's knocking on the door. The Templars have been really very naughty. That's a big term we should use. They've been very, very naughty. And what happens is this guy, Godfrey, his son, Balian, that's who Orlando Bloom is playing. He turns around and he's like, he goes, we've got to protect Jerusalem. Not the Jerusalem, but the people. And surprisingly enough, a member of the Holy Roman Catholic Church, bit of a naughty character, he turns around and he says, but you have no knights. So he gets all the guys who can bear arms to take a knee. And what he does is he makes all of them knights at the same time. And as he does it, he does that classic bit that if you've never seen it, it's amazing, you know, where it go, arise a knight. And you know it. And that last bit where you get slapped across the head with the gauntlet. And I really like that because may that be the last unanswered blow you ever take. And like, how Bushido is that?
It is.
You know, it's unreal. Hey man, you do that with a Japanese accent, mate. You are ninja level.
And you know, I mean, like, look at the other thing. The other piece that it really inspired, the great legends inspired, is the troubadour tradition in France, right? And what did they do? What did they do? They would go out in the quest for the grail for the fair lady. But where would they enter the forest? They said, enter the forest where it's darkest for you.
Yes.
Right.
Now that's Carl Jung right there, time. We are
going Carl
down
Jung of their time.
Jungian territory there, man.
Yes.
But yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so it is Jungian territory, but Jung came so much later, right? But these guys were already capturing that, the idea that you have to go where it's darkest for you. And I would argue that the Western alchemical traditions are equal to the Eastern Taoist, the Eastern Bushido traditions.
Definitely.
The fact is that they have not been understood. And here's the thing, you know, this false dichotomy of East and West, you get trapped in one of the two and you try to make the other bad. But those are two extremes within us. And I live those two extremes, being of East Indian origin here, living in the United States. And
exactly,
my homes, you know, I love both my homes. But essentially, this is the idea of being a comprehensivist, because only when we are able to see the whole spectrum, then it's only then, or only through personal experience, can you dare to say, absorb what is useful. Until then, you're full of shit.
Yeah, but Mahi, you're telling me you're not a JKD guy, but you've just totally done the yin and yang, and you have to have both parts of the circle to make it work, right?
I've got news for you. There was JKD before JKD, and JKD Bruce Lee.
It didn't start and end with Bruce. I know that's going to get me into a lot of trouble.
I'm just being facetious. My point is these are ideas that are as old as time. If you look at the work of Bruce, I mean, he's a brilliant man. He inspired millions of people and continues to inspire today. But at the same time, don't let him become the prison, right? And see where he got his ideas from. He got them from J. Krishnamurti. And where did J.K. get his ideas from? He got them from a tradition going tens of thousands of years, right? So my point is that with each generation, certain people come who are able to take these old ideas and present them anew. You know, like Emily Dickinson says, you don't need new worlds to see, you need a new set of eyes to see the world anew. And that's
you've hit the nail on the head. I literally was only talking about this to a friend of mine yesterday, because it's the rediscovery. And the problem is, to quote Guru Anasanto, is he always says, when you start training, you will think you are a genius because you discover it. So, and it's like he said, he goes, we'll take America for example, yeah? Columbus discovered America. Unfortunately, there was 130 million people there already who were like, oh yeah, you can call it whatever you want, but it's still this. So if you don't mind, Mahi, with the symposium, you've already mentioned, I don't know if I've got this right, but have you got 20? So it's limited to 25
correct
attendees, right? So what is the criteria to get to this symposium?
So a couple of things, you know, you got to have that interest. You got to have, for you, you got to have a broadish background, right? And when I say broadish background, I'm not looking for people who've done this for 50 years. At the same time, I'll be looking for 2 or 3 guys who've just done this for 2 years. Because what happens is when you have this wide spectrum and diversity, the kind of questions that they ask forces the maestros to answer in a very specific way. Number one.
Yeah.
Right. Number two, you got to be humble. Okay. It's, it's boring to be around.
Exactly.
I've done that. Move on. This is my thing. If you want to come to my house and play, I don't need to see what a big dick you wield. Okay, so come in and enjoy.
Metaphorically, I should add, dear viewer.
I would hope so. Otherwise, there'd be quite a few grades out there.
yeah. We're not doing Krav Maga. There's not going to be any. There'll be no bris today, gentlemen. Yeah.
You're gonna land me, Meg. You're gonna land me.
That one.
Oh Jesus. Okay.
I'll try my best.
Have a broad background. Be humble. Be willing to learn. So one of the things that we do is make sure that they first sign NDAs for a whole bunch of reasons. Second, I personally interview all the people. I just want to make sure that, hey, you and I fit well. And, we understand each other well, because here's the thing, I'm not in the seminar business. So I don't have to make you happy. Okay. Yeah. We have to make each other happy that this is an experience you're going to share with me, and that's an experience I'm going to share with you. And we both are better off at the end of it. So it's kind of like, figuring out who your teammates are on this crazy experiment. Right. And I don't have to love you, but I need to be able to like you and respect you and say, okay, you have a differing opinion, you have a different aspect of looking at things, but come on, let's do this together.
Yeah, you see, this is the thing. It's very refreshing to hear that in today's world, really, where it's a case of everything is now, it's a commodity, everything has a price. And then when you actually meet people and you say, well, actually, no, you might not be a right fit for me. Like, that's one thing that I always pride myself on, because I don't want to teach you. If I don't like you, I don't want you in the room with me.
No,
why? Because life's too short. Life is too short. So you mentioned some of the maestros that you're going to have here, and some of the guest instructors, for want of a better term. Can you give us an idea of the sort of people that you've got abroad?
Sure. So I'll just go through the list. So number one, we have Ton Pui, who specializes in Destreza of the Radha school. He's going to come down and show the latest development of how Radha school of fencing came about. Number one. Number two, from Cebu, one of the Kanyate brothers, key collaborator and top student, Grandmaster Ron Liu, is going to show how the Latigo Idaga works. So the short whip and the dagger, right? So this is the beginning. You begin to see the evolution of two-handed weapons, which are mismatched, asymmetrical weapons.
Yes.
Right? 3 from Mindanao, the island that was never conquered by anybody, really. Gentleman Mushtaq Ali Ansari is going to show some of the fighting principles of the spear, the shield, and the sword. And I hope I can twist his arm into showing the Kampelan. He's one of my teachers. He doesn't like showing it, but I hope he will at least show some of those principles, right? Then coming on to Northern Africa, the Nimcha, the curved saber, that is what the Moors used when they were in Andalusia and they were kicked out, whatnot, right? Depending on who you ask, one say kicked out, the other say forced out. But okay, I'll let those experts decide that. But it's the curved blade. So the classic battle between the curved saber and the rapier, right? He's also going to show El Matreg, which is the long staff, on how the Northern African long staff works. Coming into the New World, we have Professor T.J. Irby. Brilliant man, a fearless explorer, and understated to the core. Just one example, he was working with Helio Gracie in the early 80s, serving as his translator. He's the only outsider to have been allowed into Grima, and he's graduated from it. So he's going to show how the machete arts developed in the jungles of Colombia and Panama. And he's a professor in New York. So it's not just a nobody, you know?
Yeah.
Then coming on further up to the vast expanse of the American Southwest, the bullwhip was developed. Anthony DeLongis, who studied Destreza, was one of the first people who made the first DVDs on Destreza, also a pioneer with the rebuilding of how the whip should be used and, you know, reigniting that fire. He's going to come and show how the long bullwhip works. And from the Southeast, so this is the first time that I'm kind of breaking my, I had always said that I would not teach, but you know, my teacher James Keating, he's unable to come for various reasons. So me and one of my other brothers are going to start showing how the Bowie knife is actually used, right?
Oh well, you see, this is the thing, right? The Bowie knife was what really got me, because everything else is a sort of try and establish a timeline is so hard, because we don't know, we literally don't know. But with the Bowie knife, because it's a recent development really, and then obviously because it's a recent development as a blade, famously the Jim Bowie knife, right? And the other one as well is what got me, that really piqued my interest, was Louisiana, Arkansas. And I'm like, because Louisiana, all you think about is New Orleans partying, and then you realize that those Cajun boys down there take no messing. So tell me about this.
What happens when you party a lot? You bloody fight.
You get into trouble.
Right?
So, I'm Irish, man.
Yeah, I know. So then, as one of my Irish friends taught me, he said, "Oh, the question to ask is this a private fight or a public fight?" So I said,
yeah,
like, well,
you can always,
I like that.
Yeah, you can always tell when it's a wedding because the girl's wearing white. That's it, because they're still fighting. Yeah. It's so the Bowie knife. So when did you start training in this? And if you don't mind, before you do that, I'm getting ahead of myself here. When did this knife start?
Okay, can I just hold on to this question to the side for a second? I'll just finish the other three instructors and I'll come back to the
Sorry, I jumped in too early. Sorry.
No.
I didn't realize it was another three.
So the Bowie knife, my brother-in-arms, Dexter Mixture, and I will be showing this. Now, then looking at, okay, how did this transform the Chinese arts, right? So the Chinese are going to go all crazy, like, no, Spaniards didn't influence us. Look at Wing Chun, look at JKD, right? So this is where one of Ted Wong's top students in Spain, who is also a flamenco dancer and is deaf, is going to show how fencing transformed JKD, right? Ooh. So, and he moves, he's poetry in motion. Just watch him move, he's poetry in motion, right? And then last, there's an organization called the SCA. What do these guys do? Now think about them as dog brothers with swords.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. A lot of blood donors there then, yeah?
Yeah, I mean, so they do wear armor, but they are essentially full contact armored fighting. Now, why that is important is because they're using the medieval weapons from Europe, including Spain. And now, while few groups are trying to revive what they think is in the classics, right?
Yeah.
These guys have the other end of the experience that these guys just like to fight every Sunday. And then with these weapons, and they're going to tell you this is what works and this is what doesn't work. So what we're going to get from them is the biomechanics of thousands upon thousands of fights that they've had. So this is where this comprehensive view between theory and practice, between old world and new world, and different perspectives, all on the same floor.
Yeah. Oh, that's going to be amazing. Yeah. As you were saying, when you were saying about it being comprehensive, you are literally going from one end of the spectrum to the other, and like even down to the timeline as well, from the very beginning to like, if these guys are still fighting every week, again, there's no better crucible. I don't care what anyone says. You can drill, but under pressure, for real, you'll find out what works very quickly.
Correct.
And absorb what is useful, reject what is useless, and then make sure you avoid anything that gets your ass kicked. That was the line that Bruce should have given you, but he didn't want to give that.
And most people don't quote the line preceding to it. From your own experience.
Your own experience,
not somebody else's.
Add what is specifically your own. They don't want that part. There's a lot of that going on at the moment. So if you don't mind, I'm gonna just gonna drag you back to the Bowie knife. Because I'm by the way,
happy to answer
this
that.
is purely for me.
It's a pure passion for me. Okay, so I'm happy to answer that. So nobody really knows when it really started, but it became famous with Jim Bowie, of course, and his brother. So there's a whole history behind it, right? The interesting thing is that all the three fencing schools, meaning the Spanish, the French, and the Italian, existed in Louisiana, in New Orleans, and they were all along, one street. At one point, there were 30 schools, and many a times what would happen is that, hey, you were going to get into an honor match, so you would go and pay the fencing master a whole bunch of money. Okay, I've never fought before. What the hell do I do? And you had that one night to train, and you basically then went out the next day to go defend your honor, or adios, mofo. Right. So that's how it actually began. Right. That's how it began. Now, there were a series of things that work. So you see a deep Spanish influence because they were among the first people to settle it. But you also see the French influence because Louisiana was French territory for a while. So you see this amalgamation and the birth of a very American craft. Now, why I say American craft? Yes, there was a deep influence by the really well-to-do French and Spanish influences. But who are the guys who were settled here and who were first, second, and third generation Americans? They grew up very different with an attitude that was a pioneering spirit that broke free from the shackles of tradition in Europe. I mean, that was the promise of the new land. So this is where I said, it's the genetics, it's the geography, and the attitude. So the attitude was, hey, these are the pioneers.
Manifest destiny, man.
It is.
You explain that. You explain that to people. They go, "What? Oh yeah, God wants us to. God loves us that much. He even killed all these guys for us." It's but it was a common cold, but it sounds a lot better. It sounds a lot. So how did you? So how did you start studying?
James Keating and Bill Bagwell are the two guys who basically revived and saved what was the Bowie knife, right? Because what has happened is it kind of started to disappear with the knife being banned in so many places. They even had hearings in the damn Congress, which is our parliament, around the Bowie knife, and there were congressmen and senators who have actually pulled out the Bowie knife during hearings. So there's a deep, long history, right? So it went into ill fame and also the rise of the gun, right? And then, of course, we Americans love guns. So they're like, hey, this is better. If I can shoot you guy from 50 feet, I don't want to get messy with the blade because double kills happen all the time, right? So those two things got the Bowie knife to go sort of into the background or disuse, but it was never lost, right? I've met quite a few guys who are, how shall I say, moonshiners and bootleggers.
Yeah.
Right? They still use
There's a lot of them in that area. There's a lot of them in that area. Funny, it's a family business.
It's part of that culture, like some people drink, some people make the drinks. You need both. And these guys made the drinks and then they smuggled, and they had to make sure that their stuff was safe. Right. So these guys still use it. And I've met a few of them who were pretty damn scary with it. But anyway, the credit for it goes to James Keating and Bill Bagwell and recreating some of the Bowie knives, and his knives are pristine. They start at about $3,000 and go higher, right? But it's like it moves like butter in your hands if you know how to use it.
Yeah.
And then James Keating, basically collecting all the techniques and recreating and putting a structure in a way that it can be then passed on. So since about 2013, I've been studying with the man, and I'm on the phone with him at least twice a month, if not 3 times a month, and back in the day when she was not my wife yet, she was my fiance, she used to get mad at me because I used to have she used to say, oh yeah, you have your Friday night date with Keating. And because I would not take her out Friday nights.
So yeah, that unfortunately, that is as age old with martial artists. You'd rather wrestle men than be with me. And I'm like, yeah. But it's just how it works. So Mahi, whereabouts are you holding the symposium and when?
So March 17th, 18th, 19th. This is
St. Patrick's Day.
Yes. Yeah. What better day to pull out blades?
Hey, after baby Jesus's birthday, it's the most important day of the year for me.
Yeah. And then this will be in the Bay Area in California, close to the San Jose airport. So one of the things is that we don't publish the location. Only the people who are in the program
attending.
Attending, they get it. We don't want any spectators. We don't allow any wives, any children to come in. This is very serious. You come in at 7 a.m., the doors close, no Wi-Fi. You don't take pictures, no videos. You pick up your weapons and you play till 10 p.m. And then we do that for 3 days.
Wow.
So it's 40 hours. So think about it this way. Your most traditional seminars are 3 hours, 2 hours or 3 hours. This is 40 hours.
Wow. So how do you apply
so just go to www.immersionlabs.com, right? www.theimmersionlabs.com. You'll see the program brochure there, and you'll see the link to apply. About 10 questions that you need to answer. Once you answer those questions, we get it. We'll send you an NDA. You sign the NDA. So this is to protect all the people. This is also to protect the location. Because look, sometimes we've called people of opposing tribes into the same place.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, this was the one thing I was going to say is I am really impressed that you can pull this off, because I know Filipinos who don't speak to their brothers. It's a bit like the Brazilians, and it's like, with the Brazilians, you only have to worry about them either talking you into a ill-fated business deal. By the way, that was a joke, sort of. No, the other one is with the Filipinos, guys. Those guys will be carrying a knife.
No, I know. So what happened during my second symposium, Stigmata, I brought the 3 schools of Stockton together for the first time.
Oh wow!
I had
really?
Sarada at Dequardas, and I had Bahalana all come and teach. The first one when I did Legacy of the Blade, I brought the guy who does the Mexican knife and the guy who does the South African knife, who don't like each other together, and they taught on the same day.
Wow.
So I think people truly want to do this, but it's the followers and the other bullshit that prevents people from doing it, right?
Well, if you don't mind, it would be very remiss of me not to mention a good old mate of mine, Mark Stewart, as we always say.
Oh, he's my brother.
It's not the original guys, and it's not even any of the guys who are any good. It's the guys who are spending too much time online talking crap, and they're the ones who cause all the trouble. And you're like, let them guys fight it. Yeah, you don't want to. I hope Mark doesn't mind me name checking him, but it was like, it's bizarre when people talk about lineage. We're interested in the same thing. Why are we arguing? And it's like, oh, well, I don't agree with this. But that's like football or soccer.
Yeah, there's a really great Taoist master in California. I love the line he has. A lineage is a cult I like, and a cult is a lineage I don't like.
Hey, I tell you what, it's too long for a T-shirt, but it's a great slogan. You know what I mean? If I could put that on a T-shirt, that'd be the one.
Yeah, it's a gentleman by the name of Ming Liu. Brilliant, but he captured it, right? See, you're relying on lineage when you don't have balls to stand on your own feet.
Well, that's one of the things I've said. Yeah, I've got friends of mine who define themselves as martial artists, and I'm like, but you train like three hours a week. So for the rest of the week, who are you? Because if you're only truly alive for 3 hours, yeah, it stinks to me, man.
Isn't that a sad commentary? Because what it also says is, okay, what about your entire human experience? What is it that you truly love? Who's it that you truly love? What is it that you truly are trying to become? Right? I love martial arts I would hope that you know that I'm passionate about this stuff. I love this stuff, but why do I do it? 2 reasons. One, be a better man, but be a better role model for my family, for my children, for my community. That's what matters.
Well, you see this. You mentioned right at the start when we were talking about this. Yeah, it's you didn't quote him, but it's one of my favorite lines. It's Muhammad Ali, which is, if the man at 50 who is the same man as he was at 30 has just wasted 20 years of his life. Yeah, and right. Martial arts is exactly that. So what I'd like is, who do you think are the people that would like to take part in the symposium? What are you actually looking for from them?
Open-minded, humble, looking to say, okay, I might know 1 or 2 of these arts. I may have played around with 1 or 2 of these arts, but let me look at the rest, because, I, like everybody else, is on a search for some meaning, search for something that speaks to me, right? And you might just find it, right? How many of us maybe started in Taekwondo or karate at the Y, right? I did, yeah. Right? It was fun. And then some chance meetings got me into training with something else, and that completely changed my life, right? So it's a call to adventure, right? If you are stuck in, okay, I have found the answer to world's problems and it is XYZ, stay at home. Don't let this disrupt your delusions, right? Stay at home.
Right? I do like that one. Well, you see, just as you were saying, when you're on about meaning, it's the old Viktor Frankl, man's search for meaning. And it's like, from where? Well, you'll find out. Do something uncomfortable, it's, and that, I don't want to sound like a new age homina yoga teacher, but, find that, get out of the comfort zone.
Because what kills you is the comfort zone. The only places we truly come alive is when we are in that place out of the comfort zone. And that's where where steel sharpens steel. You can't sharpen your steel with your mates in your gymnasium. Adversity
shapes you. I truly believe that, because guess what? It's like, everyone's got a big grin on their face when they're eating a birthday cake, right? But guess what? For the other 360 odd days of the year, you've got to be on the ball, So if you don't mind, Mahi, could you sum up in 1 sentence why somebody should? By the way, I'm sold already, for the simple reason I'm a geek and I'm a historian and I really enjoy learning new stuff, right? But if you had to sum up in 1 sentence why somebody should consider going to the symposium, would you be able to do that for me?
Yes. You like blades? Come and see how it shapes you from this long to this long.
Now that is something else. You see, the thing is, Mahi, you want to know the truth, right? Like, obviously we're still in the interview proper here, but you are literally one of the only people I've ever met that, when you interview, that I'm like, whoo, this guy. If I was brought up, if I lived in America and I was Indian, I think I'd look like Mahi, because that engaging, really, really it's rock. Yeah, I'm nowhere near in your league, by the way. Oh. But it's like, the crazy thing is, it's your attitude towards this. If you want to know the truth, I think your attitude towards the symposium, the adventuring, which, if you don't mind, I'm just going to quickly mention now for the guys who are watching this. Please get the chance, just Google Mahi, check him out. When I said at the start about him being the Don Draper of our time, that is the truth. There's so many arts that would be lost. But as I said, as we were going through, when I was doing my research, I had no idea there were so many arts in the Caribbean. I had no idea. And then you went to some hairy looking places. As I said, if Indiana Jones was wearing a gi, he would look like you, because that's the two worlds that you're transversing when you do this. So is there a link that you'd like for the guys who are watching this? Because I just Googled you and I went straight to YouTube and checked out. You did a great TED talk, by the way. You're looking very stylish in that suit. I'll give you that. But your TED talk was amazing. But is there anything else that you'd like to aim the guys at?
Again, it's more about the arts than me, honestly. And I've always shied away from going out in the public. But it's my buddy Mark Stewart who's been pushing me. He's like, no, you got to be out there. You got to get your voice heard. And I was like, there are so many other better people. But I think every organization reaches a point where you kind of need a front man. So now I am the front man. And that's why I think of myself more as an explorer in residence, right? I'm not a master. I'm not a grand poobah. I don't sound like something you could order from Taco Bell, some of the titles are crazy, super grand burrito, blah, blah, blah. No, but the joke is that student first, teacher next. That's why exploring, because I think what we need is constantly exploring. So what I would say is, if you want to check something out, check out the Immersion Labs and check out the people who are teaching, because I go through a lot of effort finding these guys. And some of these guys might be in your neighborhood or in your country. And that could be the key that you've been looking for. Because guess what? What we don't need is another Mahi or another Tom or another Mick. We need another you who's explored it in your particular way. And you shine that light around the world,
You just said something there that made me smile, because where you were saying about not being out there, when they Google you and see what you've done, like, honestly, there's not a lot that impresses me, but the fact that you're going out there, experiencing it for no other reason apart from the fact that it's just to make you a more complete person, human being, and it's inspiring. And I really do mean that. That's not BS either, because the amount of guys who say they're going to do it and they go, right, so I'm going to go and hang out with these guys, and again, with the Caribbean was the one that got me, because it was only at that point that I was thinking, so all of these African arts, how, this is the colonial in me. I was like, right, so these guys were taken to the other side of the world. They forgot how to fight. And then you shone a light on how not only did they keep it going, but as I said, I mentioned it earlier, and I really do mean this, your thoughts on this regal bearing that all men should walk as kings. And again, I'll get accused of being a really bad Dollar Tree, Poundland, Jordan Peterson here. But this whole, masculinity is toxic. No, masculinity is great. Because guess what? You want a spider. If there's a spider in the bath, Mahi, guess what? No feminist is going to get that spider. They'll be asking for Mick Tully. You know what I'm saying?
I'll put it this way. When you look to destroy masculinity, you're going to also destroy femininity. And why would you want to destroy beauty from the world? Okay, so for the sake of the beautiful feminine, become all the man you can be.
Exactly that. Do you know what? I don't think we can top that. So, Mahi, I mean this. I love our interactions anyway, but this has been just wonderful. Big thanks, as I said, big thanks to Mark Stewart for getting us together in the first place. Hopefully see you at the symposium. Guys, if you're watching this now, it's dead easy. There'll be all the links that you need. I'm going to do the Joe Rogan bit where it's like along the bottom there. There'll be all the links that you need to do this. And man, life is so short. We've got a great opportunity. And nothing else, you're in the Bay Area, right? If you're from England, guess what? The weather sucks in England in March. California, always good. All right. So Mahi, I really mean this. Thank you so much. Thanks again to Will Henshaw for putting this all together. And one more time, Mark Stewart, I'll be drinking a Pabst just for you. Blue Ribbon. Other beverages are available, Mahi. I have to say that by
so it's been a real pleasure. Thank you so much. And, you know, I look forward to us crossing blades and breaking
let's do more of this
and getting a little drunk and happy at the same time.
Let's do all of this. All right. God bless. Thank you. Bye-bye.